Welcome to ZKast, everybody. I'm Zeus Caravallo from ZK Research, your host, and I'm here for my very first in-person ZKast. And I'm delighted to be at America's most beloved ballpark, Fenway Park, and I'm with Brian Shield, the CIO of the Boston Red Sox. So Brian, why don't you say hello to everybody? And,
hey everyone. Hey, it's great to be the first one for his official video cast. So welcome here to Fenway Park. It's not a great day here today, but we'll make it a hopefully sort of a very informative day for you.
And I'm thrilled to be here because, although I shouldn't be biased, I am biased. I'm a huge Red Sox fan. They're in first place, so life is pretty good.
Life is good.
Yeah. So Brian, this has been a year really unlike any other in media and entertainment, and certainly sports is that way. We had the pandemic happen, and I know from talking to you in the past, you had a lot of the kind of digital things going on underway already. But for a lot of people who haven't been to a game post-pandemic, what are some of the big changes that have happened? What should they expect at the ballpark?
Sure. So first, 2020, obviously for the nation and the world, was obviously a very tough year for everyone. For sports, it was incredibly difficult. As everyone knows, we did not have fans last year, but it was a great year for us in some respects behind the scenes to sort of prepare for 2021. And so 2021 brought with a lot of changes. With COVID and with sensitivity to security protocols and safety and things, we moved to 100% digital ticketing. That's a big deal. I mean, some clubs have had that, but to have 100% digital ticketing here at Fenway Park, I wasn't quite sure that was going to happen in my lifetime. So that's a big deal, and it has a ripple effect. So everybody that goes to a game will use their mobile phone device, unless there's a couple exceptions, and and that introduces opportunities for us to be able to put more services on those phones. So now we have things like mobile food ordering. We're adding more capabilities to the phone system. We replaced all of our point of sale technology during this period, if you will. Obviously, around the park, I think first and foremost, we added more sort of safety and security kind of protocols for COVID and things like that. But it's a great year, and in 2021 to me, and 2020 a little bit too, it was a great year to test things. So regardless of whether you're in sports or in any other industry, you now have the opportunity, or a little bit more license, I think, to sort of experiment. And so we have done some experiments, and we're doing a lot of those right now too, so I can tell you a bit more about those as well.
Yeah, well, I guess it's you probably never had permission before to almost use the ballpark as a live petri dish to try things.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also were very fortunate in that our AAA franchise, the Woo Sox in Worcester, who moved up from Pawtucket, who've been there for many, many years. They just opened a brand new stadium, Polar Park, this year. And we're using that a little bit with some of their people there to test new technologies, or for them to test technologies that we're looking at as well. And so it's kind of an exciting time where I feel like now we've got a broader ecosystem between working with some of the folks at Polar Park, with JetBlue and other minor league facilities, to be able to kind of look at how all these different sort of digital fan amenities can kind of play nicely together. Yeah. So it's a great time.
Well, I was a big Paw Sox fan, but I live closer to Worcester, so I got mixed feelings about that.
All right.
Anyways, as a fan, you mentioned digital ticketing, and I thought that was pretty interesting on how that worked. And but what other kind of changes are you thinking about making as the year continues and moving into next year?
Well, first, a lot of it starts with infrastructure. So one of the challenges in a ballpark is that it's a big space. I mean, Fenway Park is some 650,000 square feet, and you've got a lot of, because it's built in 1912, you've got a lot of the challenges with stanchions and different poles and different positions. And when you put all those people densely packed within a ballpark, or any stadium for that matter, you run challenges. Like doing Wi-Fi in stadiums like this, or ballparks like this, is really complex. Same thing with, so we have cellular services with 5G. We'll talk more about that. But it starts there. We also use 2020 as an opportunity to move exclusively to Google and GCP for a lot of our fan-facing data efforts and things like that, and that's been a big success for us. We also moved to Salesforce for all of our CRM, and we basically retired a lot of legacy technologies because, as we discovered, as we kind of dug into this further, trying to get to that next level of technology and services, a lot of it comes back to do you have a platform that can scale? Do you have a platform that's operationally solid and things like that? And so there's been a lot of underpinnings in order to kind of prepare us for the future.
Yeah, in fact, some of the stuff you're doing with Google ZKast is unbelievable. I've been to a lot of games before, and I was at the All-Star game, at the Home Run Derby, and the amount of data that you guys would present in real time was incredible. You got spin rate and exit velocity and how far the ball traveled, and all the stuff is real time now, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what many fans don't realize is that a lot of that information, we have, dozens and dozens of cameras trained on pitchers and batters and position players and things like that, so we can learn from these things, right? So, as you mentioned, is that everything from release points, XY axis where it crosses the plate, trajectory off the bat speed, where the players are, path to the ball, you name it type of thing. All this is captured and analyzed. And what's really exciting too is a lot of it's not just analyzed, but now it's being able to be processed and consumed in almost a near real-time fashion in many cases. And so that'll afford new kind of opportunities and learnings and things like that. I mean, baseball has very strict rules about, technology in the dugouts and what can be used within the field of play. But as those sort of rules change and evolve type of thing, I think we'll find that both we can do a tremendous amount of work on the analytics side. Some of that, I think, in time will find its way onto the field as well.
So, Brian, you are the CIO of the Sox, and a lot of my audience watching ZKast are also CIOs. And I'm curious as to move to this digital media platform that you've really built here. What kind of infrastructure upgrades does that require?
Yeah, so for us, one of the biggest improvements that we've made really this year, that'll be really seen sort of the second half of this year completely, is our migration to a new Wi-Fi infrastructure. So we chose Extreme Networks. Major League Baseball has a relationship with Extreme Networks, as does actually the NFL as well. And so we're now implementing close to 600 wireless access points around Fenway Park. That'll be completed probably in the next couple weeks. So we're really excited about that. We're kind of in a hybrid mode a little bit right now, but even from our performance testing thus far, it's exponentially better than anything we've seen before. And as you and I talked before, providing wireless services within a traditional corporate offices or even a campus is relatively figured out. I mean, it can always improve, and the new technologies that are out there now are exponentially better, in terms of performance and handling of density and things like that, even sort of the ability to kind of target antennas and things like that. But when you do it in a ballpark, it's exponentially more complicated. You've got a lot of infrastructure. People watching this probably can't see everything here within Fenway, but trust me when I say there's a lot of impediments to a signal. And so trying to be able to kind of provide high performance, with the environment that we're in, with the density of fans and things, is a real challenge. And so we're really kind of on our third generation of Wi-Fi, with Extreme, and we're really excited about just how much better it's gotten. And so we're really excited about what that'll enable. It'll enable new capabilities around IoT. We think we'll be able to handle much more video processing from fans. We'll be able to do some carrier offload, from a DAS or cellular perspective, and that opens up richer applications. We spend a lot of our time thinking about mobile apps, and how we can basically kind of engage the fan all the more, and really things like Wi-Fi and things like 5G through our partner Verizon are really sort of table stakes in order for us to be able to deliver those capabilities that were once really kind of impossible.
So one of the big questions I get from network managers is this 5G versus Wi-Fi 6 debate, right? But you're running both in the park. And I'm curious as to how you're using the two to create that great fan experience. And I'll be honest, as a fan that's come to a lot of stadiums, fans have a kind of a love-hate relationship with wireless services inside stadiums. You want it, you need it, but it doesn't always work. So
I think that's fair. Yeah. I think, as I said before, we're on our third attempt at this. Yeah. And really the first couple attempts, I would say, in terms of Wi-Fi at least, Wi-Fi's evolving. Wi-Fi started out, how does it work in your home or corporate settings? But again, trying to translate that to large stadiums, large venues is a whole nother level of complexity. And really only certain carriers can really, or certain partners can really do those things. And so we feel really good about sort of our choice there. They are complementary. We also moved technically in 2020, we moved to Verizon 5G here in the park as well. So we really have both the latest technology in the field of both Wi-Fi and cellular, and we see it very much as a complementary kind of experience. I mean, if we also kind of expanded both of those around the ecosystem of Fenway Park. So for us, it's not just within the bounds of Fenway, it's sort of the venue, it's the environment. We want to create a really seamless experience, if you will, for fans, and that really requires both. So for us, if you're going up an elevator, you can get great cellular service. When you're in the park, you'll get great Wi-Fi. We'll offload some of the cellular services onto Wi-Fi, so that we create additional bandwidth capacity for fans on the cellular service. So I think for right now, we feel as if with Extreme Networks and with our partner from Verizon, that we've kind of somewhat future-proofed our infrastructure, at least with today's technologies, and we feel like we've got partners that can help continue to kind of evolve this somewhat complicated but critically important sort of partnership that they have.
Yeah, I know the other interesting technology you run here is the Wi-Fi analytics platform for Extreme Networks. They last year, I think I wrote a post on how they became the official Wi-Fi analytics provider for MLB, like they are for the NFL. What are you using that tool for? What kind of things are you looking for?
Yeah, great question. So I mentioned before we had a couple different prior generations of Wi-Fi. One of the challenges with Wi-Fi historically is you can install it, you design for it and architect for it, but at the end of the day, it's really difficult to tell how it's going to perform until you have people in the stands. And that was one of the challenges last year. We didn't have people in the stands, and so we implemented some new capabilities in the park with 5G and other things in other areas, but difficult to test, right? So again, 2021's turning out to be a great year of testing. I think the really good news for fans is that those tests are looking really, really good. From an analytics perspective, we now can understand sort of like, how are all the APs performing? How many people are taking advantage of Wi-Fi within given sections of the ballpark? Do we see sort of degradations in performance in certain locations? The nice things about some of the new Wi-Fi capabilities with Extreme 2 is it takes less of a burden on your phone, so it's not draining your battery as much as it used to in things. It can also operate in more of a kind of a parallel method as opposed to how it worked in the past. So we're really excited about what that all means, because for me, at the end of the day, it's really that is the foundation upon which I think the fandom indies are all built. And so to us, I feel like we've somewhat, we now know capacity issues, we understand performance a lot better. We're going to learn a lot more in the second half of this year, so we should do another one of these. We're excited about Extreme also because they understand stadiums and they understand ballparks, and that's a big deal. I mean, and with their Cloud IQ capabilities and things like that, we see ourselves having a sort of a future on-ramp to even more capabilities on the analytics side.
Yeah, let me ask you too, from a fan perspective, how do you balance the need for privacy and security? We were talking in our prep for this about you're experimenting with facial recognition to be able to enter parks faster. I know with the digital ticket app, I now have to give you my email address in order to be transferred that ticket, right? So a lot of things, maybe I just would have bought tickets off somebody else. I'm coming in the park kind of anonymous. I'm not now. So what's that juxtaposition of privacy versus convenience, and how do you balance it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one of the reasons why when we moved to Google GCP, we really designed the whole architecture around sort of the single view of a fan. And MLB is incredibly sensitive to this area, as are all the clubs, to data privacy issues. So we have quarterly compliance expectations with them. We have expectations, obviously, with GDPR and CCPA and all other data privacy capabilities and stuff. So MLB is sort of the single point of handling all of our data privacy with one of our partners, OneTrust. And that's worked out great. And so we don't keep any more information than we have to in order to kind of support the needs of the game and things. So it's I think baseball does a really thoughtful job of managing sort of that balancing act, if you will. And you mentioned cybersecurity. I didn't mention that one before, but one of the other major improvements that we've been focused on, really over the last handful of years, but even more so recently, is really around data privacy and cybersecurity, and how do we sort of both protect our data, how do we provide all of our sort of employees with the education and awareness to kind of be good stewards of that data. How do we have the tools in place to be able to sort of safeguard our assets and things like that, or the assets of our fans. And so I feel really, really good about sort of the progress that we've made. Yeah. It's obviously an ongoing, challenge, and I think like every company faces, but I feel really good about sort of, the progress that we've made, really kind of with our partnership with Major League Baseball.
Yeah, now in addition to the fans, you also have to think about the players and the game itself. And I know at All-Star Weekend, I actually met with Raleigh Fingers, the Hall of Fame pitcher for the Oakland A's, and I asked him his opinion of technology integrated into sports. And he said he's all for it, because if you can, as a pitcher, if you can go back to the dugout or the bullpen and look at your throw-in motion, maybe make a change or something, it's great. But he did bring up the need to not forget about the human element.
Sure.
So we were talking about automated balls and strikes, which I believe are coming, right? And but how do you balance, like, it's a game played by humans, umpired by humans, players make mistakes, made mistakes, and it seems if you bring too much technology in, you almost ruin that, right? So what's that balancing act?
That's a great question. I think it's, I mean, I don't think baseball's unique here. I mean, we all watch, football, basketball, hockey, and things, and I think probably most people watch NFL as it pertains to these kind of conversations, and it is a balancing act. I mean, sometimes we love to say, "Gosh, I wish everything was reviewable and we could do this and do that," but at the same time, we have the other challenge of really sort of ensuring that games don't go too long, and that we're so this balancing act between accuracy, integrity, the realities of sort of personal involvement in the game and things like that. And umpires are a part of the game. They're they've been there since the beginning, and I think that there's a real role for them, and will continue that way. Regardless of some of the automation that's come out already. In certain areas. I mean, obviously we have challenge rules and we have other sort of things. But I think the umpires and their role in sports will be here for the long term. I think it'll change. There'll be nuances here and there in terms of how that gets implemented that we're already kind of seeing both in major and minor leagues, as well. But I think the role of the individual, in this case the umpire, I think is here for the long term.
Yeah, I know initially baseball's thinking about maybe just providing a feed to the umpires and they can decide whether to use the data. But that's going to be fascinating to see the digitization of sports. They're talking about that in hockey, being able to know when the puck crosses the line, or in football when the ball crosses the line. So this is a trend that's sort of here.
Yeah, I think it's great to find the select use cases that make the most sense,
yeah.
Right? And then sort of kind of work your way around. I mean, today I'm a big believer of leveraging technology where it makes sense and challenges kind of where they make sense. It's hard sometimes when I watch a player slide into second base and someone's got their glove on them and they're off the base for
this
about
much.
For about like a tenth of a second, by 16th of an inch. And someone's like, "Oh, you're off the base," and I'm like, "I don't know if that's the way it was intended, but I guess by the letter of the law, that makes sense." So I think it's how those things get implemented, and I think baseball so far has done a pretty good job of that.
All right. Before we wrap up, I do want to get into some fun things. We are at Fenway Park, and you are the CEO of the Sox. So, favorite player of all time?
All time, Pedro Martinez.
Yeah, I would guess that. I would echo that too. In fact, I loved when he was interviewed about Babe Ruth, asking about the curse, and he said that if he faced Babe Ruth, he'd hit him in the ass. So right, that's a very Pedro moment. Most memorable moment at the park?
Well, at the park, for me, I started here in 2012, which was a good year.
Yes.
Because we won the World Series that year. So I think, my probably most memorable moment was obviously 2004. We won the World Series. As a lifelong Red Sox fan, as someone who grew up not too far from here, it's 2004, and just the way it all went down, being down, 3-0 to the Yankees and coming from behind, and all the heroics of David Ortiz and things were, unforgettable. And to win it all, that was, I think, the first time I ever sort of shed a tear at a sporting event like that. And but 2012 for me personally, just being able to kind of experience kind of what I saw in that case on television was really amazing, and really it really kind of brings home, just especially when you're an employee, I think in certain cases. I mean, to a Red Sox fan, obviously all these things are critically important, and they feel like life and death sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes when you work at
it is life and death.
Yeah. So sometimes when you work here, and you kind of see like some of the almost like the sausage being made. It's sometimes even more rewarding because it's particularly emotional and whatnot. So that was my.
For me, the one that I always remember, I believe it was in the 04 series against the Yankees, when Mark Bellhorn hit a homer off the pesky pole. For some reason, that sticks in my head. I remember hearing this on TV, the sound of it hitting the foul pole, and then that being a home run that set him up for the rest of that game. So that was, for some reason, that moment I'll never forget that one. So, and here's another one. If you had to pick, other than Pedro, if you had to pick one pitcher to pitch for the Sox in a must-win game, who'd you pick?
For a starter?
Yeah.
Chris Hill.
Chris Sale.
Yeah. So and hopefully the new and improved Chris Hill 2.0, who will be sort of making his debut hopefully really soon, will be equally impressive. But Chris Sale to me is just sort of the master pitcher, and I'd have Koji or Hara, closing the game. I really miss watching those games. It's fun watching those pitchers, relief pitchers particularly, who just can really sort of hit the catcher's mitt on every pitch and just really spot the ball. And he was remarkable at what he did.
And I think for me, it's Curt Schilling with a mention for Derek Lowe, though, because he was really money when he had to be. So,
Yeah.
And then last question, and I'll let you go. Prediction for this year: we're in first at time of recording by half a game over Tampa, I believe. Are we going to hold it and win the division? And what do you think this season brings?
Well, when I came to the Red Sox, I learned from Larry Lucchino not to take, there's I think many of you know there's a certain jinx in baseball or some sports about sort of predicting things. I'd like to say that I expect us to go deep into the postseason, and hopefully it'll be good news for all the Red Sox fans.
Yeah, well, we haven't won one this decade.
That's true.
So let's hope this brings the first one. So anyways, Brian, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Appreciate the time. It's awesome always talking to you. It's always great to hear what's going on in the field of entertainment, because this is, as you mentioned, one of the hardest types of environments to manage. So thank you to Brian Shield from the Boston Red Sox. I'm ZKast Caraval. Before I go, though, I do want to give a shout out to eWeek, my media partner. This ZKast is done, of course, in conjunction with the Z Speaks program. So thank you very much to eWeek. Thanks to Brian, and thanks to the Boston Red Sox for having me.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.